Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. If you're paying attention, you know that you only make money when you work. It might be great money, but it's dependent on you. The information on this podcast will help you solve that. We interview experts and provide analysis into financial freedom through commercial real estate. Why? To help physicians like you thrive. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. This is your host, Dr. Michael McManus. Thank you for joining us here today. We're in the final stages of the pirate episodes, part 2. For anybody watching on YouTube, we've talked about in some of the former episodes about the double eye surgeries and kind of all the challenges that has brought. But today we're going to jump back out of challenges and just go into some nuts and bolts of real estate investing again. And so this is just kind of a beginner's guide to syndications. I've had a lot of questions about this. And, as the show has grown, we've had new people joining in, and even people have been looking at investing in real estate or have been doing it actively on their own. The whole syndication thing can be a little bit overwhelming. And, once you get used to it or into this world, it all seems very normal. And I sometimes forget that going back to when I first started, the terms and the structure and everything can be very overwhelming. And so I'm going to go through it again today. We're going to be doing a series of webinars kind of on these same topics of kind of a beginner's guide or an intro and walking people back through. And these are going to be very interactive. So to give you a chance, instead of just having to sit there and listen to me, you can interact and ask questions. We did our first one that was more on tax savings and wealth planning with Unicia Pratt from Excelstra, who's really helped me. And so that one went well. It was our first webinar, and we'll repeat that one sometime in the future too. If people are interested in jumping on and listening to those, I know we had some issues with that one on some of our things went out, had the wrong times, and that confused a few people. So I apologize for that. But thanks for joining us here today. And let's jump in to a guide to syndications. I'll repeat this at the end. Even though most of what I'm doing are not multifamily or apartment syndications, there is a book out there called The Best Ever Apartment Syndication Guide by a guy named Joe Fairless. And I would recommend this because it's the best book I've ever read on reviewing these things. And I actually read the book, and then I got the Audible book, and I just listened to it over and over again in my car till it all made sense, till I'd heard it all enough that it was no longer a foreign concept. So I think that is a great resource out there and one I would recommend. So without any further delay, we'll jump into today's episode. So what is a syndication? A real estate syndication is essentially a group of investors who are pooling their resources to acquire a larger property, typically commercial real estate, that would be too expensive for one person alone. The investors come together under a sponsor, otherwise known as the general partner, who manages the deal and the property on behalf of the group. Most of the other investors are limited partners or passive investors who contribute capital, earn returns, but are not involved in the day-to-day management. So an example would be, so we have 10 doctors who want to invest in a $10 million apartment complex by pooling their funds. So let's say instead of $1 million from each person, sorry, I mixed up my own example there. So they want to invest $10 million into an apartment complex, not that it's a $10 million complex. And so for this example, we're going to make it easy and say they're going to put in $1 million a piece, although this is a very big contribution to a syndication, and you can do it for a lot less. So this way they can collectively purchase the property. So then they take a professional real estate investor or a general partner who manages the deal and everything involved with it, while the doctors receive passive income from the property's rental profits. Why are they powerful tools? because it allows investors to participate in much larger institutional grade deals than they could do on their own. These deals can often give better returns through economies of scale, while in allowing the limited partners to be completely hands off, have a regular job, but still receive income and potential tax benefits. So, what's the difference between a syndication and a joint venture or a partnership? So, a joint venture or partnership, under the same example, would be that these 10 doctors come together and they pool their money, but they are all active partners in the deal and they kind of sit in this deal. However, the partnership is drawn up. We could say, just for this example, they each have 10%. So 10 of them put in their $1 million. They each own 10%. Um, Now, a partnership or a joint venture could be drawn up where they're not equal partners in the deal. But more often, when you have a joint venture, everybody's a little more equal, and that way everybody gets equal voting. You could also set up a joint venture where you have unequal partners and say for every, the minimum in this $10 million deal is $1 million. If somebody puts in 2 millions, they get 2 votes when time comes. But typically in these situations, everybody is active. And as soon as you could take a joint venture and draw up your operating agreement so that not everybody is actively involved, but now we're kind of sliding towards being a syndication and changing the responsibilities. So, some comparisons: the syndication. In the syndication, the general partner manages the property and the deal, while the limited partner or LPs invest capital but do not participate actively in buying the property, financing the property, and any day to day decisions. Uh, this structure is more passive for the limited partners who receive benefits but don't do the work. In a joint venture, this requires more active participation from all partners. Each partner typically contributes not just capital, but also some time, skills, and effort towards the deal. Decisions are made collective, and everyone is involved in the operation, which can be more time intensive. Now, even within the general partnership, there may be multiple partners who have different roles. And that's where syndication can be confusing, because the general partnership may be a group of people who act more like a joint venture within that general partnership, but that's all part of the GP or general partner. And then the limited partners are the ones who aren't actively involved, but put money in and receive money back out. So, what are some of the pros and cons of these different structures? So for syndication, the positives are passive income for the LPs. They don't have to do any work. Also, scalability. It allows access to larger, high quality commercial deals. And the limited partners' liability is also limited. So when somebody invests in a syndication as an LP, they still are at risk and could lose their investment like any investment, but they can only lose the value of their investment. Where the general partners typically have more on the line. And there's some differences here in how the deal is structured, what kind of asset it is, but they could actually, if the property goes belly up, they can lose more than their initial investment and can be on the hook for the failure if the property fails. Um, and that actually I consider good for the LPs, because that keeps your general partners motivated. So, what are the disadvantages of a syndication? Well, for the LPs, they have little or no say in the property management or decision making. So they give up control when they also give up those responsibilities. And it's a more complex structure. So syndications often require more formal legal agreements and can be more difficult to understand for newcomers. So, on the other side of the coin, a joint venture. So the advantages is more control. Everybody who's a partner has a say in decisions. It also gives greater flexibility, where it's easier to structure and can often be faster and cheaper to set up. Um, and that's a lot of that because everybody still has control afterwards. So there's less regulatory pressures. So what's the disadvantage of a joint venture? Well, everybody has to be actively involved. You get control, but you have to be more actively involved. And you have limited scale because um, when you have a more limited number of people involved, you're not going to be able to do as big of a deal. Um, and that's part of it looking like, how do you manage it? If you put together three people in a joint venture, it's a lot easier to come to an agreement. When you put together 10, starts to become harder to put people together, and come up with an agreement. If you put together 100 people in a joint venture and everybody has a say, this becomes unwieldy. So really what happens with the syndication is you take those 100 people and now you're going to say, okay, to be able to actually make decisions, there have to be a limited number of people involved in the decision making. And that's where those people now basically become the general partners, and this becomes a syndication, so that now the decision makers are a small enough group that they can actually make decisions. And as that happens, then the other people become more limited partners. And this is where now that starts transitioning into a syndication. So, which structure is the right structure? It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So, syndications are ideal for investors looking for passive income to gain access to larger properties and professional management. So, if you want to do it all yourself and learn, you can go buy a duplex or a single family house or a small apartment building, and you can manage it all yourself. You can have total control, but now you have to do the work. And depending on your experience level, um, you're going to make more mistakes versus if you have professional management. Joint ventures, they're more appropriate for somebody who wants a hands-on role. They enjoy managing it and they're comfortable working closely with a small group of partners. And that's the key thing. So at this point, when you bring on partners and become a joint venture, you can do a little bigger deals, but now you have to work together. And the good and the bad of working together, the good is you divvy up different tasks. Everybody has their thing they're good at and they do their part. You don't have to do everything. The bad part is now you have a group of people you got to work with. And so anybody who's in private practice had partners, knows that, partnerships can be difficult if you're not all on the same page. So how do you get involved in a syndication if you want to? So first of all, you have to find deals. And this is where you have to find a place to go find them. The easiest place is some of the crowdsourcing platforms that are out there. It's like Realty Mogul, CrowdStreet, or Equity Multiple. I've used the majority of those in the past. The great thing about them is they source all the deals and you can just look at them. You can look at the proven track record of the syndicators. Um, the downside of these is typically you don't get as good of returns because now the platform for operating the platform is also taking some returns. When I initially used those, I thought, okay, I'm building some safety in here because these guys are experienced and they don't want to put bad deals on their platform. So they're going to vet these deals and they'll be good deals. My experience was, and now when I was doing this was kind of the end of the what I'll call the multifamily bubble, where everybody was getting into it. Interest rates were low, prices were skyrocketing. Um, and what it turned out to be is they need to do deals to make money. And if there aren't great deals out there, what I found is they'll do some deals that aren't so great because if they don't have deal flow, they don't have their commissions, they don't have their payments, and their whole platform falls apart. So my experience with some of those platforms was there were a few dogs. I've had some capital calls. There have been a few that didn't have capital calls, but they're not really paying anything out. And none of them have met the projections, but that was probably everything that was going on in the multifamily syndication space from, I mean, really like 2015, but especially post COVID until interest rates shot up. So, how else do you find deals? You can find syndicators going to meetings. A lot of them will sponsor meetings and talk to people. Um, but they're selling. The big thing you can find at meetings though is you can meet other investors and find out about, people they've invested in and who they're with. Other sources are joint investing groups. There's quite a few different groups out there. There's groups on Facebook. Um, and it really kind of just starts like getting into the process of finding sponsors. There's a new platform coming out through the um, oh my goodness, I just forgot their name. Um, I'm gonna have to pause here. Through Bigger Pockets, where Bigger Pockets was traditionally were a place for active real estate investors, mostly doing things like duplexes and fourplexes, to get together and share knowledge and learn from each other and grow, and also be introduced to different resources, management software, lenders, stuff like that. So Bigger Pockets is now developing a new platform focused on real estate syndications, where investors can talk about different syndicators and learn about these different syndicators. So that's going to be a great resource. You can just go online and search for real estate syndications, and you'll find a lot. If you say you're interested in passive real estate investing on any platform like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you'll start to see all their ads. Um, None of these sources are vetted, but it's also a place you can start contacting these syndicators and talk to them, hear their story. You'll learn a lot through talking to them and asking them questions. A lot of people are intimidated. I don't know what to ask them. Just go on Chat GPT and say, I'm a new investor and I'm talking to syndicators. Give me some questions to answer and ask, and they'll give you some great questions to start the conversation. There's really a lot that can be learned through this process, and you'll get a feeling for the different syndicators. There's other groups out there. I'm a member of a networking group called GoBundance. There's a passive investing tribe within GoBundance where they meet every other week and go through different deals. And sometimes they'll have sponsors on to present their deals. And there's some super experienced people in these groups who really run the group and are trying to help bring other people along and teach them. I wish I would have joined GoBundance a long time ago before I started passively investing, because they do a lot better job vetting deals than I was able to do in the beginning. Um, and that's, there's another network. If somebody wanted to know more about GoBundance, give me a call. You can also, or set up a call. You can also just go online and find GoBundance and do a discovery call with them. Um, I now, as I've been part of the group, start finding in all my other networks more and more GoBundance members. So initially it was just for men, but there's a women's GoBundance now too. Um, so we'll get back on topic there. Sorry for that diversion there. So those are different ways to find syndicators. I know in some cities there are meetups who meet and go through investment deals on a regular basis. Some of them are bigger or smaller. So that's something you could look for locally. Um, so then once you find a deal, how do you evaluate it? You're going to hear a lot of terms, and we'll go through some of these another time, but things like projected cash flow, internal rate of return or IRR, the risk profile, the trustworthiness and history of GPs, and how to investigate all that. This part's actually harder than it really is just finding people and meeting them. And is one of the big benefits of some of these investing groups is while you're learning from the group, if you're ready to start investing, you're like, you know what, I'm here because I wanted to invest some money and make some returns. There's a point where, you decide you trust or not, and you have mentors or not. But when you're in one of these groups, if the group likes the deal and you've decided you like and trust the group, it gives you the ability to start investing your money before you're 100% ready of evaluating these deals yourself. And then once you're in deals, and if there are different people within the group within the deal, these deals get reevaluated and how's it going? And you get to ride along and learn from that. And I can tell you, once you're invested in a deal and your money is actually in the deal, the amount of learning that happens, For almost everybody I know, and I can tell you, for me, especially for me, that now it's real money. When things go well, you see a big check and you're like, oh, this went well because of these things. When things go bad, you don't see a check, or they start doing a capital call and you have people to discuss it with. The amount of learning goes way up. And so there's another advantage of being part of a network that describes deals. Um, Through our webinar series here, I'd like to try and develop one of these groups that look at things beyond multifamily, because most of these groups are looking at mostly multifamily. Maybe they're doing a little self-storage, but there aren't a lot out there that really you can hammer through doing industrial and retail and office deals, and the amount you can learn from those. I mean, I even today from my investment group, um, looking at an industrial deal that looked like a pretty good deal, and it's not a lot of work to do it. Everything else is all set. But I just reached out to one of the guys in my group who really focuses on this type of deal, and he kind of walked me through, like, here's the things I do. He does more value add deals, but we went through that whole process, and most of it is stuff I had heard before. But to now have somebody who really focuses on this and a deal in front of me, it all becomes much more real. It's kind of the difference between learning surgery in a textbook and when you're actually there doing it. And then when you recap it and look back at it afterwards and go back to the book, that learning is very real. So again, that's the advantage of being in groups. Some of the common barriers and misconceptions people have before going into these deals. One of the big misconceptions is that you need millions of dollars to participate. And I apologize, because even my example was saying $1 million. In reality, most deals out there will have a $50,000 minimum. Some of them are $100,000 minimum. And even if that seems like too much, if you find a deal you like and you find an operator you like, but you're not quite ready to go in at that level, and I do recommend when you first start, try and spread your money out. And so you systematically go into at least 5 deals to start with, because that way you don't have everything all in one place, and you're going to learn more as you look at these deals. I'd say 3 to 5. When you get above 5, it becomes overwhelming. And then you just stop keeping track of them, especially if you're a busy full-time doctor. It gets to be too much. So that 3 to 5 gives you a little diversification and enough to improve your learning curve. Now, if you look and say, well, how much money do I have? I don't have enough money to spread that out. If you again, if you go back, you find a deal you like, you find a sponsor you like, and you've never invested with them, and you say, hey, I would like to, I right now, my plan is when I find sponsors I like, I want to do multiple deals with you. That way you're not reevaluating sponsors all the time. They're not having to reevaluate you. Say, but I'd like to do a test run. I know your minimum is 50,000. Can we do 25,000? Because I want to spread this out. And a good sponsor will like that story, and they will say, no, I don't want all your money, but yes, why don't we do this as an easier first time investment? We'll decrease the minimum for you here for this first one. Let you ride along and see what you think. So you can take that 50,000 minimum. If you've got, I would say, before you're getting into real estate, have at least $100,000 that you're going to put into it. And that way you can do, or you could probably even do it at 75, but then you can go do 3 deals at 25,000 each. Find sponsors who are doing 50,000 and ask them to do an initial at 25. So I would say from that standpoint, at least $75,000 of liquidity that you're ready to invest, and that you don't need that money back for the next 3 to 5 years. And looking at the timeline of the syndication, and you can give yourself enough coverage doing it that way. So kind of a recap of the key points we've talked about today. We've done a comparison to joint ventures. So hopefully this has helped people understand what a syndication is. If this is still new to you, my call to action to you is take some steps. You can attend our webinars, and hopefully this will help this all make more sense to you. Or get Joe Fairless's book, The Best Ever Apartment Syndication book. That's a great book. You can go on Bigger Pockets. There's lots of resources out there, but make a timeline of how long you're going to take to learn about this, and draw a line in the sand of when you're going to start, because it's really easy. I met so many people at the Passive Investor MD conference that had been looking at syndications for over a year, but had never invested in one. And at some point, you got to pull the trigger, and you're never going to be completely prepared. It's funny talking to Joe Fairless, that this is a guy who in his syndication company, his investment company, they have, I think now like $1 billion under management, but he's invested in the money he's made in a lot of other syndications where he's a passive investor. And he says, I'm still learning. Every investment I do, I learn something new. So if he's still learning, you're going to still be learning. And at some point, you have to just start. So that's my call to action to you. Set a date when you're going to be done learning and you're going to start. And, a timeline where you're going to start calling syndicators and start talking to them about the deals they're doing, or join a group where you can invest with a group and see what they're doing. But there's your next step to, okay, I'm actually calling and moving forward, but then set a date that you're going to put some money in. Because once you step over that hurdle, that's the biggest hurdle. And once you invest in one, and if you plan on doing like 3 at the same time or 3 sequentially, once you've done those first 3, you're going to feel totally different about the whole thing, because now you're in it, and you're moving forward. So I hope this has been of value to you today. We're going to do some more basics here over the next few weeks and kind of go back to helping people jump in on that first investment. I appreciate your time here and listening. If you have any questions, and I'd love to talk to you. No sales pitch here, or through our webinars coming up is a chance that these are going to be interactive, not just a presentation. Our first one wasn't quite as interactive as I would have liked, but we're figuring it out. But give you a chance to answer, to hear the information, ask questions right away, meet some other people in the same space. And maybe out of the webinar, you meet some people you can talk to on a regular basis. So again, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate your time, and I hope this has been valuable to you. And we'll see you next time here on Surgeon Syndicate.
Do you care about paying too much in taxes? And would you like to save more of your hard-earned dollars? Here's what we found. We found that most financial professionals have a one-size-fits-all solution. So the question is, would it make it easier for you to have someone tailor your tax solutions to your individual needs so you can keep more of your money and do what you want with it? That is exactly what we do at Excelstra.
As surgeons, we know the difference between routine surgery versus life-threatening interventions. And I want you to know that I've used Unicia and her team for my personal financial intervention, and I love the results. I would do you a disservice if I didn't recommend them to you.
We'd love to help you, so let's jump on a call and see how we can collaborate. Simply go to www.excelstra.com/McManus and book your free call today.
This has been an episode of Surgeon Syndicate. If you got value from this episode, you know other surgeons are hungry to become job optional, and you can help them by sharing this content today. Schedule a call and we can make a plan. Looking forward to having you with me on the next episode.